Hey everyone, Andre here, and as you probably know, we've been covering a lot of Super Mario 3D All-Stars on the channel, given the fact we've been playing it for a couple of weeks for the review. So the review went up today, along with a 25 things you may not know about the game video, along with our live stream and who knows what else. But apparently between all of this, you guys still have questions about the game. So I figured I'd answer as many as I can right here, right now, some of which may be redundant, but you know, not everyone watches all of our videos. So let's just cover as much as we can, starting right now. And first up, we have Jesse, who asks, is a blue coin collecting in Sunshine any less frustrating? So Jesse, unfortunately I haven't spent much time collecting a bunch of blue coins. I say unfortunately, but really that's a fortunate thing. So I can't say for sure, but my guess would be that it's probably about as frustrating as it used to be. It may be just a little bit less so now, not because of anything different about the game, but simply because the game being in HD now and widescreen, it's just easier to see things. So that might make collecting some of them a little bit easier, but on the whole, it's going to be the exact same experience that you remember. Frank Platt asks, in the soundtrack menus, you said they were bare bones, but did they at least play the next song when the current one is finished? Yeah, so rest assured, Frank, it'll just continue right on to the next song, whether it was randomly selected when you started up the game, or if you chose it yourself. So yeah, you can choose a song, go back to the menu, and have it play while you're navigating the menu, and then it'll just continue on to the next song once it finishes. 307 asks, is Super Mario Galaxy 2 a hidden unlockable? Oh, how I wish it were, but unfortunately it is not. Dustin asks, most important question, how do all three games feel using a Pro Controller? I refuse to play with Joy-Cons. So I have good news, Dustin. The Pro Controller feels great across the board. I used it in all three games. The only game I didn't use it entirely for was Galaxy, but I wanted to test out the Joy-Con controls for the pointer. Unfortunately, I ran into a couple of issues with that, like having to recalibrate it frequently, and also it losing connection with the console just because of the distance from from where I was holding it. So I went back to the Pro Controller and I had almost no issues. Aiming for the star bits can be a little bit tricky just because of how you have to angle both your hands now because you're holding it with both, but it's really a relatively minor thing. So yeah, rest assured, Pro Controller works great across the board. Positive Link asks, do the sunglasses still lower the screen brightness in Sunshine? They sure do. They work the exact same way. So yeah, if you find the game a little bit bright, you may want to put on the sunglasses. Bloops asks, do 1-ups transfer between play sessions or any of the games this time? Unfortunately, as far as I can tell, they do not. Every time I've started the game, they've reset my life counter, which is a little annoying. So yeah, keep that in mind. Sleep mode can be a lifesaver in this case if you want to take a break and then come back to it later. But again, if you swap games at all, or swap between the three games on the disc or on the game, in the collection, I should say, then yeah, you're gonna be resetting your life counter from the get-go. Rob Johnston asks, can you shake the Pro Controller to use a spin in Mario Galaxy? Yeah, you can. So you can shake either the Pro Controller or the Joy-Cons, or the entire Switch if you're holding it in handheld form. So yeah, you can shake anything you want, or you can shake any of those to get the spin, or you can just tap Y instead, which is a brand new feature. So if you don't want to use motion controls for the spin, just tap Y. Kieran asks, is Mario Sunshine still really glitchy in 3D All-Stars? So, yeah, I mean, it's the same base game, so they're still getting the same camera quirks and weird little issues they're going to come across. I will say the overall presentation just looks better in HD, so it kind of has a side effect of making it feel a little bit less glitchy, but yeah, any of the actual glitches are still going to be there. However, I have noticed some of the special effects, such as like the reflections in the lakes, those actually look better now. Like, they used to have a shimmering effect, and as far as I can tell, that's pretty much gone. So if you consider that a glitch, or like, it's not a glitch, but you consider it like a falter in the presentation, and that actually is better now. Joshua asks, does the audio that was supposed to be in the Wii Remote for Super Mario Galaxy sound okay on the Switch? So I actually tested this just a few moments ago, and as far as I can tell, the sound effects seem to be gone, at least specifically for the star bits, which are the ones you hear most often. So to clarify, they still make sounds in the game, but they used to make a subtle, like, little, like, jolt noise, or not even a jolt, but like, it sounded like they were like being dropped into a bank from your Wii Remote speaker before, and as far as I can tell, that sound's completely gone, so sorry. The Hypist asks, what are the controls in Super Mario 64? I've seen controls for both Sunshine and Galaxy, but not this one. So let me actually hop into it right now, but I think it's pretty much what you'd expect. So I'm going to do a live check on this. So maybe while I do this, I'll head on to another question. Sir asks, as a lefty, is there a way to switch the left Joy-Con to be the one that's used as a pointer and for the Galaxy Shake? I'm used to having my left hand do it, so I'm just wondering. So unfortunately, I'm pretty sure... So, okay, for shaking, you can use either Joy-Con, so that's not a problem. You can shake either one you want, and it'll make Mario, make Mario do the spin. Unfortunately, I think when it comes to the pointer, it's locked to the right Joy-Con, but I can double check that too. Now back to the control question. So obviously the left control stick moves Mario, right control stick controls the camera. A is jump, B is jump, X is punch, and Y is punch. And then R changes the camera between Lakitu and Mario views. ZR, it causes the crouch, which is also how you do like the backflips and whatnot. And ZL can do the same thing. And L does the exact same thing as R for the camera function, and that's pretty much it. Fun fact, you can use a D-pad though in Mario 64, which I don't think you can in the other games, and it acts as if you're holding the control stick all the way. So basically, it's like a constant run button. So yeah, there you go. If you want to use the D-pad, you are welcome to. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and mosey on over to Galaxy to double check that lefty question. So we're gonna continue on in the meantime. And Max asks, in Galaxy, what happens if you try using a controller without gyro, like a GameCube or Hori controller? Does the start cursor just not show up? So that's a good question, Max. I actually tried this with a GameCube controller because the games do recognize it as a controller, just not as a GameCube controller. And of course, the GameCube controller, as you said, doesn't have motion. So what ends up happening is you're able to get the cursor onto the screen by hitting the recalibrate button, which I think most controllers can access, but because there's no gyro, that cursor's not going to go anywhere. So you might be able to interact with some things if you can position them in the exact middle of the screen where the cursor appears by default. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to do a whole lot. So yeah. They follow up with, so yeah, in fact, the games are pretty much unplayable because you need that cursor even to access like basic menus between like to save the game or perform a couple other functions. Max continues, and another question if it's not too late, but do we have the exact dimensions Galaxy renders at? I've heard it's lower than 1080p but higher than 720p. So we actually did pixel counting ourselves, and by that I mean Brainchild, our resident tech guru. He confirmed that Galaxy does run at 1080p at least some of the time. In the instances he counted it was 1080p. It sounds like it may actually dynamically scale based on how Nintendo worded it, but we didn't see proof of that ourselves. I'm not doubting it, but I'm just here to say that at the very least it does run at 1080p at least some of the time, if not most of the time. And I can say in my experience, it looks super sharp across the board. So I didn't notice like it dynamically lowering. Not that it didn't, I just didn't notice it. Next up we have a question from Carlo who asks, are all textures improved or only some? Like are the textures on Sunshine and Galaxy improved, like are the textures on Sunshine and Galaxy Mario improved like in 64? I'm pretty sure they are, though it does get harder to tell, especially in Galaxy because it's harder to get the camera like up close to Mario because of how the camera works in that game. So I can't say for sure in that case, but I'm pretty sure it does for, I'm pretty sure Mario in Sunshine has been enhanced similarly to 64. And to that point, not every texture has been upgraded. In fact, most of them haven't been, I would say most of them haven't strictly been replaced like we have seen some of them in Sunshine and 64 at the least. But I wouldn't be surprised if they all had some kind of like upscaling thing going on that does enhance how they appear, even if they're still the same base texture. But again, that's just my own speculation. What I can say is these games look pretty great across the board, but you can tell at times, like in Mario 64 especially, which textures have been replaced and which ones haven't. Anonymous Pikachu asks, how do the soundtracks work? Does it just play the selected track once? Does it go to the other, or does it go on to the next song when one finishes? Or are they on an infinite loop like in Odyssey's music list, excuse me. So I already kind of answered this. So the way it works is that when you first start up the game, it chooses, as far as I can tell, a random song. Then from that point, I believe it goes in order. So I think it just goes down the list. Don't entirely quote me on that, I'm pretty sure that's what it does. And I would assume that they're on infinite loop. I think from that point, they would just loop either through that same game or through all the games. I'm not fully sure what happens, but yeah, I wouldn't be too worried about it. And especially because it has a music mode too, so the whole idea is that you can throw on music mode, like turn off the screen and just listen to it go through all the music. But again, I don't know if it ends at the game or if it ends or if it goes on to the next game. Maybe I can check that during this video. David asks, no real changes in the camera controls, right? I always hated 64's camera, so I thought they could fix it, but I'm afraid not. So yes and no. So in a general sense, or I guess in a behavioral sense, no, nothing has changed as far as I can tell. The Sunshine's camera still goes through walls whenever it wants to. Get hung up on things at other times. Same thing with 64. So yeah, the camera, as far as I can tell, behaves the same way. But what has changed is the input, as far as I can tell, across the board. So on the previous generation, or on the original versions of these games, if you press the camera, if you press either the right camera button or the right camera stick to the right, the camera would, hold on, let me see if I have this right. The camera would move to the right. So yeah, if you pressed right on the camera button or stick, the camera would move in that direction, revealing more to the left. How it works now is it's the exact opposite. So if you press the control stick to the right, the camera actually swings to the left, but that's because it's showing more to the right. It's a little counterintuitive, but I think it actually does make more sense. But it's hard for me to tell. It's weird going back between these different versions. But I will say I didn't have any trouble with the cameras on Switch. So I think the change does make sense, even if it never bothered me on the original games. I'm guessing at some point the industry changed, and yeah. All right, I'm gonna finally test this pointer thing. Sorry, that took a little while. So I've got the pointer. Okay, I've got the pointer up on the right Joy-Con, trying to get it on the left, and it doesn't seem like I can because, yeah, because I think L just brings Mario to a stop when I use it. I'm not quite sure why, but yeah, I'm pretty sure that means I can't change the cursor. I even turned off the right Joy-Con just to check. And yeah, that is correct. So, hold on, I have an idea though. Let me try something, a bold idea. Oh, sorry, you guys, I'm showing just random gameplays. You probably figured it out by now. So what, oh, here's something. Wait, no, that won't work. I thought maybe you could combine a Pro Controller with a right Joy-Con to solve it that way, but no, the right Joy-Con won't even jump now. So, yep, there you go. As far as I can tell, there's no way to have the left Joy-Con act as a pointer like you could. I mean, beyond physically swapping the controllers in your hand. Next up, Metal Sonic Reject asks, does a pointer in Super Mario Galaxy work with third-party controllers? So I already kind of addressed this. I think it comes down to whether it has gyro or not. If it doesn't have gyro, it won't work at all. If it does have gyro, I assume it will work, but I can't vouch for that personally. Marcos asks, does Mario Sunshine feel worse playing it on the collection? Not really. I mean, the only instance in which I think that I could say it plays worse is that you lose the analog control to vary your water pressure. And it's not a huge deal. I've heard there may be a couple of times in the game where it may have been useful to do that. I didn't encounter any during my primary star playthrough. I have every primary star, just none of the secret stars, none beyond the core ones you collect in the levels. And I didn't really find any time I thought it could come in useful, except maybe the casino, but I was still able to solve that without much issue. So yeah, I wouldn't say the controls are any worse beyond that slight difference there. In case you're unfamiliar, right now Mario will always shoot the water at full power. Moving on, Katie says, I see a lot of comparisons between the collection and the original versions, but what about comparing the collection to the old games running on an emulator with a higher resolution, since resolution seems to be the biggest difference? So, for us, we don't use emulators. Nintendo tends not to be a huge fan of that, and we will not sacrifice our relationship with Nintendo for that. So I wouldn't be able to check it out ourselves, like in a video. But you could definitely, definitely feel welcome to. I would say there are other enhancements here beyond just the resolution. So I don't think that would fully capture the full scope. But again, I really couldn't say definitively either way. Zenny says, does Super Mario Galaxy still have the rumble that the original did? And if so, did they improve it in any way? So as far as I can tell, the rumble behaves by and large just as it did in the original game. I think it does feel a little bit different just because the motor, the rumble technology is different, whereas on previous systems it was a literal physical weight that was spin around inside the controller. Now it's basically a speaker, so it does feel a little bit different, but it otherwise behaves the same as before. So I don't think you're getting any HD rumble here. You're getting the same level of rumble as you did before. It just feels a little bit different. Philip asks, How do the controls and camera Sunshine hold? I found it wacky on GameCube and made me drop the game tons of times. So, you know, as I kind of already said, it controls basically the same. I will say, I didn't find it to be as annoying as I remembered it. There are still absolute times where it has a mind of its own, doesn't do what you want it to, and it'll act and behave in strange ways. But by and large, it wasn't as bad as I remembered. So I don't know if that's a function of me getting used to it, or just a function of maybe being able to see more with a widescreen display, so maybe I didn't have to change it as much. I'm not quite sure. So yeah, to answer your question, nothing's really changed, but maybe you'll have a better experience with it this time. Maggie asks, have you come across any sound effects errors? I don't mean things that were purposefully changed, although I am sad about the removal of So Long King Bowser, but there was a video going around that showed there was a sensor sound in place of a sound effect in Sunshine. So, okay, two things. I guess to address that specific point, I saw that same video, and I'm not even convinced it was a change. I listened to that video, and it didn't sound all that different to me. And I usually have a pretty keen eye on sound effects, and granted, it could have been Twitter's poor compression too, so maybe I wasn't getting the full picture. What I will say is, as I said in our review, I am really anal about how games are presented, and although I haven't played Sunshine in quite some time, obviously, I still have, like, most of its sounds and, like, intricacies, like, ingrained in my brain. So if anything, not anything, but, like, if there were several things that were off key or presented in a way, I think I would have noticed them, and so far nothing's standing out to me. That's not to say, again, that there aren't any differences, but it's that they aren't big enough to trigger any alarms for me, and I'd say I usually have a pretty keen sense on that. That's why I usually hate emulators, but the fact, in this case, I couldn't even tell it was an emulator until we've, since basically had it confirmed. So, sorry, that's my roundabout way. So yeah, no, it sounds fine to me, it sounds great. Adam asks, do you prefer playing Super Mario Galaxy with a Pro Controller or Joy-Cons? So, that's tough. I mean, I kind of addressed it earlier already. I started off playing with Joy-Cons initially, but I will be honest, I found the small control sticks to be a little annoying, which is weird because I didn't have that problem with Odyssey, which I played the entire game with Joy-Cons, but I was also annoyed by my pointer becoming desynced pretty frequently, requiring me to recalibrate. So I ended up going to the Pro Controller and just sticking with it, especially because my Joy-Con dies. That forced me to stick with the Pro Controller, and I think I like it overall. It's more comfortable, the controller sticks are bigger, buttons are bigger, and I had less desyncing or less calibration issues with it too. I think for two reasons that I touched on in the review. One, I think just because I'm holding it with both hands, it's just inherently more stable, so there's less opportunity for it to drift. But also two, I think because I'm not holding it like a pointing device, it stands out less when it's not synced right. Like with the Joy-Con, I wanted to have that one-to-one movement. When I'm pointing at the TV, I want that cursor to appear exactly where it should be. Whereas with the controller, I was like, whatever. It's not really a conscious thing. It's just more of a subliminal thing, and I think actually it might end up working better. So yeah, that's my current impressions of it. Daniel asks, is the music on the menu always random, or can it be set to a specific track each time? So it's always random, except for when you choose one, obviously, but it only stays that way for the remainder of the time you're on that menu. Once you go into a game and come back, it's going to reset to a random track again. So yeah, it'd be kind of cool if you could set it yourself, but yeah, you never know what you're going to end up with when you come back to the menu. Zach asks, is there any better way of tracking the blue coins you've collected in Sunshine, or is it still just as bad? Unfortunately, it's the exact same, so still just as bad. AdBlair2 asks, is there still two-player mode in Galaxy? If so, can both players use Pro Controllers? Ooh, that's a good question. So, yes, it's still there. You can activate it at any time via the minus button menu, which is basically the in-game pause, I guess, for the All-Stars collection, where you can access the controls and see all your actions available, and activate, in Galaxy's case, the two-player mode, the co-op star mode, whatever they call it. And it seems like I was able to play with with a variety of controllers, like a Pro Controller and two Joy-Cons together, or two Joy-Cons separately held horizontally. So I don't have two Pro Controllers myself, so I wasn't able to test it with two, but I would be surprised if it doesn't work. So if I had to guess, I would say it does, just don't quote me on that. Char asks, your video mentioned that the So Long King Bowser quote is removed. Does it only apply to the Japanese version? Okay, so no, I mean yes and no. So that change originally only applied to the Japanese version of the game, or a specific version released in Japan at a later date that also included rumble control. They then took that version and put it into 3D All-Stars. So no matter what language you play on, because you can't change the language in this game, you're going to be playing off that same base version of the game. So unfortunately, you're always going to have bye-bye. It doesn't matter, or yeah, bye-bye, or however Mario says it. It doesn't matter what language you're on, as far as I can tell, you're always going to have it. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question. Rabnawaz asks, yeah, it may help to, okay, nope, sorry, that was in a general thing. Geo asks, do Sunshine's controls feel any better? No jump input lag. So I think, as I said earlier, they feel identical to me, minus the analog control. And yeah, I've noticed no input lag across the board. Like, if there is any, it is minimal. I found Mario 64, for comparison, to be pretty much unplayable on the Wii U Virtual Console because it had such severe input lag. None of that here. It feels responsive, it feels great. B-Dude asks, can you read the star statue in 64, and if so, what does it say? We actually showed this off in our 25 things we learned about 3D All-Stars, so go check it out if you want proof, but the texture remains unchanged. It's maybe a little bit sharper now, but you can't see anything based on it. James asks, does gyro work in handheld mode for Galaxy for the cursor like with Splatoon 2? No. So, well, yes and no. So it doesn't, no. It doesn't work for the cursor. If you want to use a cursor in handheld mode, if you're holding the system, you have to use a touchscreen. Yeah, I'm pretty sure, unless you maybe sync another controller to it, that might work. But if you're holding the system, you're gonna have to use a touchscreen. You can't tilt the system for it. However, if you encounter, another motion control element, like if you want to control the mana ray or ride the giant ball, then you tilt the entire system in that case. In addition, you can also shake the system to have Mario spin, just like you can activate it with Y as well, still in handheld form, of course. Ryan asks, can you use a gyro pointer for Galaxy? And oh, I think that is the that's the same question, I think, or is that the same thing I just read? Or are these two similar questions? Anyways, I'm gonna move on. Tanner asks, I haven't slept in 24 hours, guys. No, 30 hours now, so please bear with me. Tanner asks, any updates to the Super Mario 64 camera? No, beyond the fact that right and left is now reversed from how it was originally. But it matches the rest of the package in this case, so no other changes that I can tell. Luke asks, any significant slowdown scene that were a common occurrence? Goes across all three games. Not that I can recall. There are occasional hitches. I think it's only like by like a frame. Like it is these are minor hitches. In our technical analysis, I don't think we ever saw a drop below 29 frames, maybe a little bit lower, but I don't even think it did. So no, any slowdown was brief and minimal. That I can recall. Maybe there were rare instances where it got a little bit worse, but I don't recall any instances being that stood out to me at all. Let's see. John asks, yes, was Metroid Prime Trilogy hinted at in the collection? No, John, I wish it were, but it wasn't. Anas asks along the same lines, Andre, are there any Easter eggs for Super Mario Galaxy 2 on it? Not really, but kind of, because when you boot up the game, you get a little intro animation, and the music for it is the same. It's the same basic track as when you get a star in Mario Galaxy, but it's actually closer to the Mario Galaxy 2 rendition, which is really funny because that game's obviously not here. I don't know why they seem to base it on that. I think it might be a little bit different, but it is definitely closer, so I'm not quite sure why, but hey, there you go. So I guess yes, there is a little bit of an Easter egg there. He asks, does it show a Mario game of the 3 you're playing on your friends list? Ooh, is there a way I can check that myself? I don't think it does. Let me see if I can look at my own friend list and tell if it's showing me anything. Okay, if I'm able to, it doesn't appear so. It seems that it does just show you as playing 3D All-Stars, assuming that I can actually even see that here. But yeah, so that'll be my guess regardless. Let's see. Looking down here, we're getting some repeats now. Luigi says, considering all the changes were okay. Actually, that was a general comment. Ress asks, what's the biggest surprise going back to these games? I think it's just how good they look. Like Sunshine, I was really surprised by how gorgeous that game can be at times. Like that game still looks really good. It's still clearly dated at points. Like the polygonal models aren't great. There are occasional effects that still look cool but have limitations. But by and large, that game was shocking. Mario 64, I think it's super cool seeing it in HD and like really sharper than ever before. But obviously that game's very dated. But I think, and of course Galaxy is just like perfect. That game looks great. So I think the overall surprise is just how well these games held up across the board. That again, that's not to say they aren't dated, even in a gameplay sense. Mario 64 kind of feels its age, but it's still good in spite of it. But yeah, so the surprise is that these games held up and still look shockingly good at points, in spite of like their age. Mario Sunshine is nearly 20 years old and it still looks really good. And then Galaxy, like I just said, is 12 years old, I believe, and maybe 13. And that game looks like it could be a modern day game if you just, in HD. It's amazing. Eric says, why wasn't Galaxy 2 included? Because you've been a bad person, Eric. No, I'm kidding. I don't know. Maybe Nintendo wants to make more money later. My only guess is maybe the control, the gyro wasn't up to the level of performing, for Yoshi's performance, where you need that like super consistent accuracy. But I think it would still work. So I don't know. Maybe they're gonna sell it later down the line. They just want more money later. Alfredo asks, did the lack of analog triggers make playing Super Mario Sunshine easier or harder? I mean, I think I kind of touched on this earlier. It's really neither. It's almost, to my memory, almost indistinguishable, though I do miss just the fun of playing around with it. But full disclosure, I haven't gotten every star in the game. I have a little bit above the minimum of being in the game, which I think is 60-something. So there are other stars in there that might require it. It's possible I missed them. Or not required, but like maybe, you could rely on the analog controls more. I wouldn't know what they are. Adam says, let's see. Can you use the GameCube controllers, and how does motion control work in Galaxy? So I touched on this already. You can technically use them, but you can't use any of the special GameCube functions, and as I said earlier, gyro doesn't work. Let's see. Looking through some more questions. Ooh, Corey asks, what order should we play them in? So the order I went in, I mean, you can go whatever order you want. My recommended order, and I can only say this based on the order I played them in, but I think it makes sense, is chronological. 64, Sunshine, Galaxy. That's the order they came out in. The graphics get better as you go along. It's fun seeing the evolution of how the games, evolved and changed along the years. And plus, it's just tough going from the 60 frames per second of Sunshine, of Galaxy down to the 30 of Sunshine and 64. So if you can avoid that, I recommend it. It's fun going up. It's more fun going up to 60 rather than back down to 30. So it's a nice reward for making it to the end. Plus, Galaxy is just great rather than working your way back. Plus, I think the games might show their age a little bit more working your way backwards as well. So yeah, I think the games have gotten more polished, or maybe not necessarily linearly more polished, but Galaxy is probably the most polished game of the bunch. So yeah, I would recommend chronological order. Let's see here. Oh, Flick asks, can you video record? Yes, you can. You can record to pretty much any time between any of the 3 games or even on the menus. I think it did lock me out just once when it was maybe like, I think maybe on the title card or loading something, but that was when I was like accessing the menu. But otherwise, I could record on the menu too. So yeah, no problems there really. Jonathan asks, my only question is, have there been any changes to Sunshine's more infamous levels, like the watermelon contest, watermelons, which I believe they mean the contest, or the pachinko level, that make them more functional? As far as I can tell, no. I mean, it's possible I missed something, but it has been like 20 years since I played these games, and I haven't replayed the pachinko level yet. But based on the shines I have played and do remember, they seem to be identical to before, minus the just inherent, possibly increased playability just due to how much sharper and easier it is to see things. Maybe being more used to the controller, I'm not sure. Let's see here. Jared asks, they're asking, is it possible to do the blast spray with flood? Unfortunately, I actually don't even know what that is, so I remember they continue. I remember double tapping the trigger to do that, and it helped clean up things real quick, and was never advertised. Well, let me hop into Sunshine real quick. Again, I can actually test that. So just to verify, all I have to do is tap the tap the spray button with flood, and that should do it. All right, I'll try it out. I'll see if I can get anything close to what that seems like it may be. Someone else earlier had described it like a shotgun, and I don't know if that's accurate either, but we'll see. Looking down at more questions. We have one from Jay, who asks, will you be able to play Galaxy with a Pro Controller? And yeah, I've covered that. Yes, you can. No problems there. HT asks, is there HD Rumble at all? Like I said earlier, I don't think so. There is Rumble for all 3 games now, but I don't think any of it's like actual HD Rumble. Steamboat asks, for the Sunshine's final boss, how does the frame rate compare to the original? Thanks, and sorry if your review already addressed this one specifically, can't watch it yet. Well, the review actually did address this. We have a whole frame rate chart on screen, or graph, showing the exact difference for at least the segment we recorded. And yeah, as far as I can tell, it runs smoother on Switch. There are occasional super minor frame pacing issues that have a almost imperceptible difference, but that's a huge upgrade from GameCube, in which the frame rate could drop down to like the mid-20s, like 24, 25 frames per second, and that was noticeably slow. So I definitely prefer it. So based on my memory and the recent comparison on Switch. Let's see here. Yeah, I think we're down to the bottom of the barrel here. All right, I'm trying out the shotgun thing now. So I'm tapping it, and it's doing just doing little squirts out of Mario. So I don't think that's gonna work if I understand correctly, but you may want to test that one for yourself. Soul sent along a message and says, has this happened to you? And the message is another tweet that says, if you try to exit Super Mario 64, the entire Switch just soft locks. The game stops whenever it successfully exits, and you can't back out the Switch home menu, so you have to reboot the entire Switch. Well, if they're meaning via the in-game All-Stars menu, I've exited the game plenty of times with 0 issue. The only other thing I could think of is maybe they're talking about if you quit via the home menu in 64. So let me go ahead and try that. I'm bringing up 64 now, and I'll quit via the home menu and see if it makes a difference. All right, I'm in. I close the game, and seemingly, yeah, no problem. So yeah, I have not had the issue at all. No soft locks for me across the board. So yay. Mr. Japan says, it's my birthday today. I get a physical tomorrow. I'm really excited. Happy birthday, Mr. Japan. I hope you see this Q&A. I hope you listen to this long so you can hear that. Mr. Mint says, how intuitive is using the Pro Controller for Galaxy? If I generally prefer using the Pro Controller for everything else, are Joy-Cons that much better that I may want to use them instead? No, I mean, I think I found it no trouble at all to adapt, so nah, I wouldn't worry about it. Like, it's not as good as the Wii Remote was, but it's better. I think it's better than the Joy-Con, so don't worry about it. Jeremy says, is Sunshine still jank AF, or is it consistent with 3D Mario playability standards of today? So there are definitely moments of jank, and to be fair, Mario 64 has those too. Though I think it gets a little bit more leeway given the fact it was like the first 3D game, basically the first 3D Mario at least. So Sunshine definitely feels janky at points. I will say though, to its credit, is not as bad as I remembered. So the fun I had kind of helped to smooth over some of the jankiness, though there are times where the jankiness can be a little annoying or aggravating even. Let's see. No, asks, is the Pro Controller optional or optimal? I'd say so, but it's perfectly playable without it too. With any of the official controllers at least. Let's see. Supercard asks, nothing relevant, so. Sorry, just looking at a few final questions here. I know I can edit this out. I'm probably not. This is a whole quick and easy video. Here we go. Jan the Man asks, I keep seeing unverified claims about the game on social media, mainly about supposed bad performance and runtime, noticeable lag, button mappings, etc. I just can't say that hasn't been my experience. That's all I can say. Like, yeah, there are occasional hitches. They're minor. The original games had their own hitches, and I think they were far bigger, as I show in the review. It's possible this game hitches in places where the originals don't, but it never stood out to me as being an issue. Button mapping wasn't a big problem for me, and yeah, performance across the board I'd say was an improvement. To my memory and based on our testing, it seemed to be an improvement. So I don't know, I can't speak fully to their situation, but I can't say that my experience has matched it. I mean, come on, I'm the guy who hated Sunshine. I would be the first to tell you if Sunshine had performance issues that I'd noticed, and none really stood out to me, so. Alright, here we go. Spooky asks, did they fix any errors in the cutscenes of Super Mario Sunshine, such as Peach's earrings having the same texture as her eyes, or the audio mixing in general? So this is something I had to ask them for further clarification on, but I'd never heard of this before. Apparently, in one of the scenes of the opening cutscene, when you first start up a save file, Peach's earrings have her eyes textured on them. It is super creepy. I never saw it before. I wish I'd never seen it. And yeah, once you see it, you can't unsee it, and unfortunately, I'm sorry to say, that's still here too. And that one scene, I looked, those earrings are still eyeballs, so yeah, that's deeply, deeply disturbing. Like how Daisy has a third eye in the back of her head in Smash Brothers, in her trophy of Smash Brothers Melee. Let's see here. Looking at anything else, I think that's it, everyone. I think we made it to the end. Oh, hold on. We have one from Mikhail who asks, "Apologies if you covered this and I missed it, but did they reverse the camera controls of Sunshine where it only controls default and you cannot change it to inverted?" Oh, okay, I'm not quite fully sure what they mean. So, as I said earlier, they did swap the left and right controls across all the games, where now if you press right on the control stick, the camera is going to swing to the left to show you what would be to the right of your character. So, I think it makes sense, and unfortunately there is no way to invert it. That does trip you up. They have also inverted Mario Sunshine's aiming controls where we're aiming Flood. So now, rather, let me correct myself, they inverted it from the original game, meaning it's now non-inverted. So now up is up and down is down. Again, there's no way to change that. I didn't have any issue with it myself, but if you're used to the original, that might pose an issue for you for some time. Alright, and we might have 2 more questions here, hold on. Okay, actually just maybe 1 more question. Clark asks, do you control the camera in Galaxy with a D-pad or right stick? So in Galaxy, it's also controlled with a right stick, just as it is across all the games now, which is a bit different from the original because it used a D-pad in the original. And what's interesting is they actually even changed the icon too. And what's cool is I didn't even realize this, but I didn't notice until I went back to the Wii version, is on the Wii, the D-pad will light up in blue in the directions you can move the camera, because at times there are only certain directions you can move it and it won't let you move it any farther, and those directions will highlight in blue showing when you can move it in that direction. And I didn't realize this, but it does the exact same thing on the Switch, except now with the control stick, and it leaves little tiny blue lines showing the direction you can move it to move the camera. So keep an eye out for it. You can see what directions you have camera movement available to you. Woo! That's all the questions. My God, that's way more than I thought we had, and some pretty novel ones actually. I am sweating up a storm in here. It is hot right now, and I have not slept in 30 hours, as I've said. So I'm gonna end the video here, but thank you so much for watching. Hopefully this helped answer your questions. If you like what you see, click that subscribe button, ring that bell for tons more on Super Mario 3D All-Stars and everything else Nintendo Switch as well. We'll catch you all later. Bye, everyone.